Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Balanced Mama Project Radio, where we explore how occupational therapy supports women through every season of motherhood. I am Dr. Lisa Desai, a licensed occupational therapist who specializes in maternal health. And today we're going to dive into something every new parent experiences but rarely talks about in depth, which is how our roles and routines shift after giving birth. So go ahead, grab a blanket, stay warm, grab a cup of coffee, tea, or your favorite drink, and let's get into it. So, whether you're a new mom, a returning parent, or a professional supporting postpartum families, today's episode will help you understand what's really happening beneath the surface of daily life in the fourth trimester and beyond. So, we're going to start by talking about roles. When most people think of a role, they think of like an actor, different parts they play, things like that. In occupational therapy language, roles are the parts we play in life. So it's kind of like acting, but this is our everyday real life. So, for example, my role one would be a mother, a partner, a daughter, a sister, a cousin, a employee, and those are just like a few that I could name. There's also um, you could be a son, a caregiver, a community member, and now I, along with some of you who are listening, can add parent to our list of roles as well. So when a baby arrives, those roles that we had previously don't disappear, but they shift, they overlap, and then sometimes they collide. So, for example, I'm still a partner. I still have my, significant other. I'm still a daughter. I am still a cousin. However, the way I participate in those roles has changed. Those roles, I am still that person, and those are still my roles. However, I may not be putting in as much into those roles as I did prior to my role of becoming a parent. So many new mothers tell me, I feel like I lost who I was. The amount of times that I hear that from my patients is just astronomical. And one of the first things I tell them is, you may feel like you lost who you were, but you are still that person. The Again, the dynamic has just shifted, or they're overlapping roles now. So you didn't even though you feel like you may have lost who you were, you didn't. So that's not just emotional, it's occupational. So these activities that once structured your day, so your morning routine, your work task, your social time, suddenly revolve around feeding schedules, nap schedules, and recovery. For example, um, you know, prior to my first being born, which was over 2 years ago now, I had a morning routine. I did a really long commute to work. I did a really long commute back. But my day would start by me waking up, brushing my teeth, showering, grabbing usually a protein bar or a protein drink, either chugging it really quickly or taking it on my drive to work. My drive to work in the morning was about anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour. Then I walked to work from the garage. I, hung out with my coworkers for a little bit, started my day, saw my patients, and then I walked back to my car and I went directly to the gym. That was my at least 4 days a week routine. Went directly to the gym. And after that, I would likely eat dinner in that area because I would have another hour commute home. So, or actually more than an hour commute home, usually like almost 2 hour commute home. And that was my day. I came home, my husband or my fiance at that time was also home. We hung out for probably about an hour because we both worked really long days, watched TV, and went to sleep. And we redid that. And then enter my son being born. I feel like my entire routine changed. I was no longer waking up at my set time to go have my protein drink or my protein bar. I was now waking up when my baby needed me to wake up, right? My husband was now waking up when the baby needed him to wake up, whether it was a feed, a diaper change. He just needed to be soothed. So again, while those roles changed, and my activities changed, my morning routines changed, I was still who I was. My role was still a partner and a mother. As an occupational therapist, we help parents rebuild their identity through meaningful activities. So that means helping a mom, integrate her old self roles with her new mom identity. So, for example, I really, really enjoy um, going for walks. And if you've been listening to our podcast, you know how much I love walking. I can walk miles and miles and miles and still just keep going. That is one of my favorite things. However, once my son was born, I just felt very overwhelmed by even, leaving the house, getting him bundled up, leaving the house, and going for that walk. So, how did what did I use as an occupational therapist, and what skills did I learn to adapt myself to being able to go out on that walk? I bought a stroller cover so I didn't have to bundle him into, jackets and socks and shoes and all this stuff and try to um, get out of the house. So a jacket cover or a stroller cover was super helpful. Another thing I did was I made sure, and obviously, with babies, accidents happen. So you might just have to pivot and just turn around from wherever you are. But what I would make sure I did was while he was napping, even if it was just a quick 15 minutes, I adapted by, okay, I'm going to put him down. I'm going to prep his bottle real quick, and I'm going to throw two diapers into either my stroller or my diaper bag. I found that the less stuff I took, the easier it was for me to get out of the house. So that's what I would do. I had a patient I remember who loved cooking. And once she had that baby, postpartum, she just felt so overwhelmed with, meal prepping because you don't have the time that you had before. You have another human being you're taking care of. So, one of the OT interventions we did that helped her adapt was okay, let's think about maybe using meal kits initially, or let's think about maybe not every meal you need to use a meal kit, but let's think about okay, what's the most difficult meal for you to be able to prep? If it's dinner, let's use a meal prep kit for dinner. And then maybe breakfast, you can do something the night before. Or you can, you know, think about something quick that you can make, or turning it into um, prepping it one-handed using something like the tush baby, or using um, some kind of device to help you be able to be hands-free, a carrier, whether that be, or leaving your baby in a safe and secure area like their bassinet. Those are all things that you can do to help you adapt. Another thing is turning it, if you have a partner, if you have a toddler, or if your partner is into it as well, turning it into like a little family activity or into a bonding moment. I started, I also really like doing dishes, which is very weird. I just really enjoy it. I find this cathartic. So I, with my toddler now, what I do is I bring the learning tower to the sink. He is there. I give him whatever's in the sink he can use, other than obviously sharp objects. So what he'll do is he'll use the cups and pour water between the two cups, pour it into the containers, and that helps with, um, you know, keeping him occupied, but also me being able to get the work done that I needed to get done. So, so it's not about returning to your before, it's about renegotiating what matters to you now. So your rhythm of your daily life, um, is which is your routines, is gonna change, and it's we have to learn to adapt to it, right? So routines are our invisible scaffolding. They help us feel safe, efficient, we feel like we're in control. But in that postpartum phase, our routines are often completely disrupted, which is what I was kind of talking a little bit about before. So new parents move from this like predictable adult schedule of this 24-hour cycle that is now driven by infant cues. Your sleep is fragmented, your meals are irregular, you're, you know, you're holding your pee to try to go to the bathroom if your kid is crying. There's just so many things that are changing. Your basic self-care gets postponed. So your 6 a.m. showers might turn into like 1 p.m. showers. Your immediate like waking up and brushing your teeth might turn into waiting like an hour to brush your teeth. So as OTs, we view this not as a failure, but it's just a temporary occupational imbalance. We support families in co-creating flexible schedules, functional routines that fit into real life, not Instagram life. So a lot of times, when you're on social media, Instagram, TikTok, all these things, like you see these new parents who are doing stuff where you're like, why am I still in my clothes from like last night at 1 p.m. and this other mom who just had a baby around the same time as me is running like a marathon and prepping breakfast for her family of like five. I just don't understand how this is all happening. And you might feel like a failure because you're seeing these things on, Instagram and social media, but that's not functional for you, right? So your goal is to be um, creating a functional schedule, a functional routine that fits your real life. So let's talk about some practical, life examples. And these are from patients that I've worked with or friends who've told me about, just things that they've experienced and from my own personal experience as a mom. So your morning routine. So instead of aiming for that up, showered, dressed, and fed by 8, maybe a new goal for you can be, okay, our goal is going to be to eat breakfast by 10 a.m. More of a brunch vibe, right? Even if it's one-handed while I'm feeding my baby, I am going to get my nutrition as well. So that can be a new routine that you practice. And then sleep routines. So instead of having a rigid bedtime, which obviously is very, very difficult with a newborn, but as they get older and their sleep becomes a little more predictable, you might fall into that pattern of, okay, I this is going to be my rigid bedtime, it's going to happen. And when they're going through these like um leaps or progressions, whatever you like, regressions, whatever you like to call them, that can change. So focus on creating rest opportunities, like a 15-minute recharge moment during the day. So that might mean that you're not necessarily closing your eyes to go to sleep. It might just mean you're doing like a quick 15-minute meditation, or you're just doing a 5-minute, like sitting in bed, regrouping, just closing your eyes, doing some deep breathing, things like that. And then couples time. So, just scheduling a 10 minutes of like check-in conversation daily. It might be more meaningful than once a month date night. That almost feels impossible. So, from personal experience, my husband and I found it really hard to have date night because we don't have, family that lives close by that can watch our kids. Sitters aren't always available. Um, Initially, like I felt that and I still sometimes feel that way, that I don't feel comfortable leaving my child with a sitter, especially like during their bedtime and stuff. So it wasn't feasible for us to have date night once a month or once a week, like a lot of people do. It just doesn't work for us. So we make sure that at some point, whether it's 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at night, that we're having some form of meaningful conversation, that we're not forgetting our role as a partner just because now we have a toddler and an infant. So we're still checking in. So these adjustments aren't just logical, they're therapeutic. They restore your, you know, sense of like competency, of feeling good, of just being like, oh, I'm still this person that I was before having a baby. There is a lot of, you know, social and occupational roles, and oftentimes you'll have that like identity collision. So you feel this tug of war postpartum between your roles. You might be thinking, I really need to be productive at work, but present at home. And I'm failing at both of those things. And this is one of the more common ones that you hear or that I've heard from my patients. And I actually felt that way as well, where initially, and I still actually sometimes feel that way with two, is I really want to be present with my family. I don't want to lose my job. That's also part of my identity, right? But now I feel like I'm not doing enough for either one of those. I feel like I'm really struggling at work to like pay attention, to do my job correctly. And I'm trying the hardest that I can. And I'm also not giving my kids the amount of time that I would love to give them with playing and taking them out and doing all these things that I would love to be doing with them. So let's just normalize this. This is normal. The postpartum period is not a pause before resuming your life. It is life. It's just reorganized now. Those roles, routines, I'm going to keep saying those words, but those are like what we are. They have changed, and that is okay. It's never going to be how it was before the baby because our life, like every day is different. So this is just this is just our life now. It's reorganized and we need to work with it in that way. So as occupational therapists, we really try and help parents reframe the shift by identifying their core values. So what matters most right now in this phase of life, in this season? Is it, rest? Is it bonding? Is it your career connections? Are you trying to climb that corporate ladder? And you're still trying to maintain that life at home. What would you like to be able to do with your kids in order to maintain you feeling that you are still doing what you want to do and connecting with your kids, but also doing really well at work? Because there's nothing wrong with feeling that you really want to succeed at work. And there's nothing wrong if you are somebody that wants to be a stay-at-home mom, or there's nothing wrong if you want to be that 50-50 split. It's just learning how to reorganize those thought patterns and how to reorganize your day to try to figure it out. So you also want to prioritize meaningful occupations aligned with those values. So you might not be able to give 100% to being a daughter, a cousin, a mother, a partner, a workout enthusiast, whatever it is that you find really, really meaningful. You may have to take a little bit from some to give to another. And that's how you fill your cup. We also teach adaptive strategies. So things like task simplification, pacing, boundary settings, and all of those could literally use their own time to be talking about, especially boundary setting. Um, so I'm not going to dive deep into these, but those are just some of the adaptive strategies that we do teach as OTs. I'll give an example. So, for example, a mother returning to remote work might build a transitional role plan. So start part-time, use sensory breaks for emotional regulation, and then renegotiate workload expectations. A mother returning to her full-time job now needs to fit in, you know, commuting to work, needs to fit in making sure if they are pumping or breastfeeding, making sure those get done during those, times that you need to have them done. And then also making sure that you're hitting your workload expectations. So those are all things that, before you throw yourself in, those are things that you want to talk about with your supervisor. There are things you want to talk about with your manager, whoever it is that you need to negotiate these things with. Be like, hey, I am coming back. However, I don't feel 100%. And I would like to talk about a few different things with you. And how can we make this beneficial for both you and I while still respecting my role as a parent or as an employee. So when we treat postpartum as a developmental phase and not a detour, we start empowering women to thrive and not just basically survive and get by, because that's not our role as postpartum, right? There's a lot of stuff going on postpartum. Hormones are all over the place. There's just like you physically don't feel the same, and you want to be able to thrive. You're not just trying to get by. So those are things that we want to do. And obviously, we can't talk about postpartum routines without talking about partnership and support system. So, families often experience a rebalancing act. So, who's cooking, who's cleaning, who gets up at night? They're not just chores, right? They're shared occupations. So, when we work on redistributing those without communication, resentment builds. One of the things that my husband and I found really helpful are during our first baby, my husband often woke up at night to get him. One, because I never hear them crying. I am like a solid sleeper and I just don't hear. He's like, "You didn't hear the baby crying for like 10 minutes?" And I'm like, "No, I was sleeping." Um, but it was something that we had discussed, right? It was something that he was like, "Okay, well, you're feeding the baby, so you're staying up to do this. I can wake up and go get the baby." Or if the baby was feeding a bottle at night, he would feed the baby a bottle and put him back to sleep. But this was discussed, right? This isn't just something I threw him into, and I wasn't like, "This is your responsibility. You're going to do it. I want to have nothing to do with this." These are discussed topics. Another thing that often it becomes a source of contention is cooking, because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And we just have to come to terms with that. If that means you guys both hate cooking now because you're both so busy with work and taking care of the baby and you need to order out, right? It's not worth it to be fighting over these things when it's something that has a solution. Or one of the other ways you can do it is my husband would do breakfast for all of us. So he would cook the breakfast. I would do my own lunch because he was at work. I was very lucky and had my mom here, and my mother-in-law here, who would also prepare the lunch for me while I was either taking care of the baby or if I was back at work. It was ready for me. And now that, it's just me, my husband, and my two kids, dinner is often a source of like, "Oh, what are we doing?" Because our main goal is to make sure our babies are fed, right? So now what we try to do is whoever is done first putting down the baby will start the dinner. And again, that came too with, we had to have a lot of discussions about it. It didn't just, we weren't just easily like, "Oh yeah, after a long day, I really want to do the cooking. I really, really want to do it." No, neither one of us wanted to do it. And that's just real life. And I'm sure it's real life with a lot of other families too. And the way we were able to, come to the solution was communication. So again, it's so important to communicate, because you don't want these, little things just building up to start little things to start building up resentment in that relationship. So, what are some ways that, OT intervention can be used to occupational therapy interventions can be used to help with this? So we work on family-based goal setting. So let's define what rest means for each person. If for you, rest means just literally going to sleep, then that's what rest means for you. For me, rest might mean sitting on the couch, watching Selling Sunset, drinking a boba, and scrolling my phone for a half hour. And to me, That's my source of rest. Or it might be like, hey, I really just want to go to this like 45-minute yoga class. And are you okay with handling what's going on at home until I come back from that 45-minute yoga class? Another thing is just co-occupation mapping. So outlining shared versus individual responsibilities. So my husband has a very, very rigid work schedule. It's not very flexible at all. Currently I have a little bit of a more flexible work schedule. But also mine is not completely flexible. I'm not self-employed. I'm not fully self-employed. Um, I can't just drop something and leave. So I knew, since I have a little bit more of a flexible work schedule, that majority of the responsibilities for childcare would fall on me. But this is something that we had discussed, right? So I knew that I would be the one taking them to their doctor's appointments. I would, if the sports are on a weekend or their activities on our weekend, we would both go together as long as we can. There's going to become a time where we're going to have to rediscuss this, where it's going to be redefined because our kids might want to do two different things, or they might have them at different times. Um, or if there's something on the weekdays that I would likely be the one doing it, since my husband probably usually doesn't get home till 5:30 or 6, and by that time our kids are ready to go to sleep. So these are all things that um, you want to talk about. What's going to be your individual responsibility, what's going to be a collective responsibility, and what's going to be your partner's responsibility, or whoever's, helping you care for your children. Um, what's their responsibility? So my husband's responsibility is usually breakfast with the kids and dropping my son off to school on the days that he goes in a little bit later. And then the other days I drop him off, since I can drop him off before work. And then communication training, using the I statements to express needs without guilt. It's so ingrained in us that when you say I, it sounds selfish, right? I want or I need this or that. And to us, that's like, oh, she's being so selfish. I can't believe he said that. He's being selfish. But that I statement really puts a little emphasis on what you're trying to say. I really need these 5 minutes to myself to regroup. I really need you to help me with the laundry today. I really need to, whatever it is that you need. I need to go out and I need to do this. I want to do this. I want to go get my haircut today. I want to go get a facial. I want to go get my manicure and pedicure. All of these things are I statements, right? In the moment, in the heat of things, when you say these things, they can sound very selfish, but these are all things that are feeding your soul, and you have to respect that, right? There's going to be a boundary. Um, it's not always I want, I want, I want, I want, when you also have a partner who also needs to fill their cup as well. So that's where that boundary setting also comes in. That's where the need for um, discussion, communication, just co-occupation mapping, all of these things are healthy. They're healthy routines. Just remember, healthy routines are collaborative, right? They're not imposed. So it's okay if your family's version of balance looks different from my family's version of balance, or your neighbor's version of family balance, or your friend's version of family balance. Everybody's is different and it's collaborative. So we want to rebuild the routine, right? We want to rebuild a routine that aligns with your values. So if you take one message from today, just let it be this: you don't need to get back to who you were before the baby. You're becoming, expanding, evolving, and integrating. So those small steps really matter. Choose one meaningful activity daily, even if it's just 5 minutes of something that makes you feel like you. And reassess your expectations. Not everything needs to be optimized. So, like I was saying before, reassess like what's important to you, how much of something you're pouring into one occupation, one of your roles versus another one of your roles, and reassess and see like, okay, you know what, like I can't be working out, 2 hours a day anymore, 1 hour a day anymore. I only have 30 minutes. What can I get in? Um, or can I take time from something else that I'm doing to maybe get those 2 hours in or an hour in? Whatever it is that makes you feel like you are optimized as best you can. And as I always say, ask for help early and often. Interdependence is actually a great sign of strength and of resilience and showing that, hey, I cannot do this alone. We were not meant to do this alone. I need help. So you want to start these discussions early. I often tell my patients who come to see me, even before they've had a baby, have you started talking about how these things are going to change? Have you started talking about how um, maybe what you guys were doing before may not work now? Especially when you're a first time mom, it's really hard because you don't know what you're stepping into until you're there. So as OTs, when, our patients come to see us prenatal while they're pregnant, these are all things that we can work on with them. And just remember, occupational therapy is about participation in life, not perfection in your roles. So I hope you enjoyed today's conversation, and I hope that it can shine some light for you and help you understand, what the role of an OT is and how things might change as you become a parent. So thanks for joining me on today's episode of Balanced Mama Project Radio. And if this resonated with you, go ahead and share with a new parent or a professional who supports postpartum families. You can find some more resources, worksheets, and some upcoming workshops on our website. We'll have it linked below. You can, like, share, follow, comment, and help spread the word, along with our Instagram, which is balanced.mama.project. Just, remember, your roles may shift, but your worth never does. So take care. I'll see you in the next episode, and stay balanced, mamas.